Hi there, my name is Nana Kapoor, and I'm a performance coach to high-achieving entrepreneurs and young leaders. In this series, I'll be speaking to entrepreneurs and intrapreneurs on the one book that has impacted them or shaped their perspective towards their goals. These are people who read, introspect about what they learn, and thus I call them intropreneurs. I hope their stories and learnings from the best books inspire you to become an intrapreneur too. Stay tuned for today's episode, and I look forward to hearing your feedback. Hey guys, on today's podcast, I have Emily Orcullo. Emily was born in the Philippines but has been living in Singapore for almost 2 decades now. She's an experienced supply chain leader for more than 20 years across different businesses and markets in APAC. She has spent most of her career in FMCG in various regional roles, managing different teams in a multicultural, diverse organization. Emily is best known for her strong passion in developing people in an organization, enabling future leaders. She truly believes that's her calling. In the last 4 years, Emily went through a personal change management journey herself, joining an industry completely new to her, the toy industry. And she currently works as the Director of Customer Logistics APAC at every kids and adults' favorite company, Lego. Her responsibilities include driving customer centricity towards their key customers in the region while leveraging current supply chain capabilities, future innovation, and leading a team of logistics consultants across 5 different markets. She's an experienced coach for high performance at work, mentoring talents, and a strong advocate in developing impactful learning and development programs for organizations. Emily is a mother, director, coach, and she surely is an intrapreneur. She has a purpose statement to be the tree of life that enables the forest to grow. And that's one of the most beautiful things I've heard, and we'll surely be touching on that today. Thanks for being my guest today, Emily. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me, Dana. What an introduction you have. Thank you.
Just reading it, this is why I think you're one of the people that I really do look up to. Let's dive right in. And I know you have your hands full. You do a bunch of things and you make a lot of time for learning. So what kind of books do you actually read, given your leadership position, given your passion in coaching and a few things?
I'm glad you asked the question. I am definitely a nonfiction fan. So I love reading self-development books. My favorite is Stephen Covey's 7 Habits. I'm sure you've read about that. That's always a classic. I also like Angela Duckworth's Grit. I don't know if you've read about a book. It talks about why passion and resilience together is a key to success. And most recently, I'm also reading a couple of coaching books. So I'm revisiting the Grow Model from Miles Downey, and also this book called What Got You Here Won't Get You There by Goldsmith. That's actually quite a good read as well.
Now, in the stage that we're in, I feel that we just want to keep improving, and nonfiction is something that we're just drawn towards, right? Especially someone who just want to keep learning and improving. And this is exactly why we have this podcast, is to do that, to speak to people who are reading and to use these learnings to just propel themselves to a different level. So let's go into the book that we picked for today, right? For those of you who have not read this, Ikigai, the book reveals how the Okinawans, which is the people of the small town in Japan, they eat, move, work, foster collaboration and community, how they do all of that, and their best kept secret, how they find their Ikigai that brings satisfaction to their lives, and thus they live longer lives. The book introduces various concepts to help you find your Ikigai and understand the importance of it. We'll be going through some of these concepts in today's podcast. For those of you who are hearing this term Ikigai for the first time, it's why we wake up in the morning. A clear Ikigai brings satisfaction, happiness, and meaning to our lives. It's the intersection between what you love, what the world needs, what you can get paid for, and what you're good at. It's one of the main secrets to longevity and happiness. In the description of the podcast, you're going to find a diagram that shows this really well. And I would strongly suggest that before you move on with this podcast, take a look at that diagram so that you know what we're talking about. Just before this, Emily sent me a really powerful version of what her diagram looks like. So I'm really excited to talk about this with her. Emily, when did you start thinking about your ikigai? Because this concept is something that I feel like sometimes we do it, but we don't realize it's called an ikigai.
Yeah, to be honest, I never really thought about it. And I'm also now realizing that even though I've not really thought about it or called it by any name, I have constantly been in a state of reflection of what that might be. And I found this book, then it just formalized for me how to structure it and put it all together. So you can say consciously, I don't know when that was, but I think subconsciously it has been there and it's starting to shape. I think even at an early start in my life. And it only got some structure and form now because I'm making a conscious effort to really write it down for me to see and have that clarity of what is it exactly that I really want to do in my life.
And do you think that you have found it? Do you think that you have nailed it? Or do you think it's something that will keep evolving?
I think that it is still work in progress. Living it to the fullness would still require, you can say, a lot of work, of course. And I think that work will never end. But I would say it constantly refreshes itself based on the reality you are in, which is also true from my own experience. I have always been wanting to help others, but in what shape or form that could look like, I think that one has evolved over time.
Yeah. For someone who, for example, myself or any other person out there, how would I know I'm getting closer to it? How would I know I'm getting closer to my ikigai? That intersection of what I love and what I get paid for, what I'm good at, what the world needs. Is there an indication that you felt that you're getting closer to that?
Yeah, and that's a great question because I've asked that question myself. I would say from my own experience, I would say three things. So one is you clearly are inspired every day. You always have this self-drive to wake up and be the best you can every day because of that sense of purpose. I also think that you feel generally happy no matter whether there are setbacks, that are challenges along the way, but you have this sense of joy of doing things that you do and also a good sense of fulfillment. And the third for me is I can't help but also talk about it. Like I notice if I share more and I spread the joy of what I'm doing, it concretizes for me what I really want to do in my life. So if you start noticing yourself talking more to others about your passion and why you feel happy about it and the impact it has to other people, that's a great indication that you are into the intersection as you describe it, because you can't contain it. It just needs to be shared. So for me, at least, that was what's happening.
Yeah, I was not expecting that answer. I think that is so real. I, as an individual, will be able to feel that I'm doing something purposeful or living my life through that ikigai that we talk about because I'm smiling all the time, because I'm passionately sharing with people. That's such a clear indication, right? If you're not enjoying what you're doing, if you're grumpy, if you're short-tempered about it, then something's missing. It's worth exploring it a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about your life motto. I feel like not many people have that, right? Not many people have formulated a strong life motto or life mission or a mission statement. And yours seems to be something that really grounds you, and everything you do is around that. Why don't you say it in your words? What is your life mission and how did you come up with that?
Yeah. So 2 years ago, I actually went through a training and come workshop at the same time. It is called the Purpose to Impact training. And we went through an exercise where we are forced to, in a way, go back to our life history and trace back what are some of those milestones in our lives that shaped who we are, and relating it to Ikigai, the book, most of the concepts as well of what ikigai framework is talking about is also tackled in this training. So I went through a self-reflection of what am I really good at? What do I really love doing? What am I doing now that I'm getting paid for? And what does the world need? And then try to map that together side by side with this life map that we were also asked to do. And what came out of that process very clearly for me is I'm a giver. I'm someone who is passionate about growing not only myself, but growing others because I want to give life or I want to give more to those who are in need. We were asked to just form a sentence or a statement that encapsulates all of that. So I came up with, I want to be the tree of life that enables the forest to grow. It's a metaphor, basically, but how I see my purpose is I want to be you can say the life giver. And I want to use all my knowledge and skills to be able to transform life around me and also enable others to grow. And that could be in work, that could be with my family. That could also be with my community. And most recently, I found coaching that actually made me see also how directly I could impact others through the coaching process. And it made me realize that I'm led to this because of that compass that I've set for myself, which is really to be this tree of life that enables the forest to grow or enables others to grow.
Yeah, I think that's great. Every time we spoke in the past, I was always, okay, what? I want to be that giver. I want to be that force. So when you talk about what you love, what the world needs, what you're good at, what you're paid for, it all just comes down to, this is me. I want to be that. Yeah. I think for people out there who are listening to this, if you can come up with a strong statement that can keep you grounded, like that's part of your ikigai, right? I've not come up with that myself, but I would love to one day. It's something that I do aspire to have, is that statement for myself that I can keep going back to. And do you have this written in your room? Is that something you have in black and white?
Someone actually gave me this. I didn't share my purpose statement or anything, but I've been mentoring this person and then she gave me a gift. She said, "You are a tree giving life to many." When I received this, I had goosebumps because I never asked for anything in return. But this is, again, the universe validating for me that I'm on the right track. And what I've set for myself is also being felt. So I have been like putting this on display and reminding myself, live your purpose.
Yeah, it is something that keeps evolving. But it's good to have some sort of direction and then be open to how this evolves as time goes by.
Yeah.
Moving to the next topic, and this is one of the topics that the book talks about as well. It's around psychology and coaching and things like that. So psychologists help to shift the mindset of people. And a lot of psychologists don't need to be medically qualified to do this. Then the book talks about psychoanalysis, which is one step ahead. And it deals a lot with the subconscious mind to heal illnesses and issues with the patient. And it's very retrospective. It looks a lot at the past, right? Then the book also talks about something called logotherapy, which pushes patients to consciously discover their life's purpose. And there's another thing called Morita therapy, which evolves a few years before logotherapy, and it focuses on teaching patients to accept their emotions without trying to control them, and stresses the importance of one's life purpose. So when we talk about life purpose, it seems to have been going way back, right, with things like this logotherapy and Morita therapy. Now, Emily, you're a coach, and in your opinion, do you think coaching can help find someone's ikigai? Where does coaching sit in all of this?
I definitely think that the coaching process can help anyone who is open to realize what his or her direction could be or his sense of purpose. In my coaching conversations, I really pay attention to the big why. Why is this important? And what do you think are the possibilities for you? And going through a time travel a little bit, thinking about what could be future aspirations. And then you go back to, okay, where is this person now? And what potentially is the gap in between. My experience tells me that the more you actually stretch the thinking between what is aspiration and where the person is in the current state, the more we see there's a lot of unspoken truths and things that the coachee is realizing he or she has been missing in his or her life. And that leads to sometimes an uncomfortable feeling, but it is a great start to really facing yourself and asking yourself almost like an existential question. What do you really want?
Yeah.
So partnering with the coachee in this process actually draws this out and could help discover one's ikigai and have that clarity of direction. But this is just the first step. What follows next is really the person to also truly live one's ikigai. And it may not be easy because we all are in different circumstances. One baby step at a time, as long as this is the direction that you would like for yourself. You are also moving towards really living it and fulfilling as well your purpose. So I definitely see coaching to be a big help to find one's sense of purpose.
Yeah, because coaching's not something that is retrospective. You're not looking backwards. It's a lot about moving forward to where you want to get to, where you aspire to be, like you mentioned. Yeah.
Yes.
Have you been helping people do that? Have you had people come up say, look, I'm just confused about what I want to do and my purpose? And have you been involved in those coaching projects? Yeah.
Yeah. So there was one, and this is quite a happy case study for me. The person, she's been living her life mostly in the corporate world. And now what to do after that? She was struggling where to start and how to move forward. And then suddenly this question around what is my purpose and what really matters to my life now. It seems like she's not really wanting anymore the corporate life. She wanted something different and something much more meaningful. So we went through a little bit of exercise on what's important for her and came out with a plan. And that plan, I'm so happy to share, is actually working very well for her because now she also found herself in the world of coaching and using her corporate skills as well to do leadership and communications, giving out training to people who need them. And she found her sense of purpose around teaching and also coaching and mentoring people. So that was a good way of also seeing her come out in the open.
That's awesome, because if you can help someone find their purpose in life, that also gives you confidence on the magic that you create, which again substantiates your purpose, which is I'm the tree that enables the forest to grow. So it just proves that what you're doing is so impactful. Great. Now let's move on to a topic that I think I didn't realize till I read the book as well. And that's all about flow. Okay. So flow is the state in which you're so involved in an activity that nothing else matters. You're doing something you love so much, you're so passionate about, it's really fun. Scientists, doctors, artists, they have such strong, clear ikigais that they do what they love until their dying day. They're basically in a constant flow, right? They're just in this mode all the time. And if you find your ikigai, it's very easy to be in a flow. But if you haven't, it might be a bit trickier. For you, Emily, what kind of tasks allow you to be in that flow? What are you doing when you actually feel like you've lost track of time?
Yeah. I like this question because I also noticed lately it's been happening a lot. So I would say I'm in a state of flow when I genuinely enjoy what I'm doing, no matter how hard it is. And at work, I noticed that when I am in a group of people working towards a common goal and we are all open to brainstorm ideas, I really get a good kick in this process. I enjoy a lot the collaboration, being in a group. So being in an environment like that makes me easily flow into a state where I'm just genuinely happy with what we are doing, and the creative juices are just coming out. Personally, I'm in a state of flow when I'm inspired by what I have seen or what I've heard. And what happens next is I'm moved to reflect. And this usually happens when I'm around nature. When I'm around nature, I feel much more alive. I do a lot of running and just also along the way appreciating what I see and what I hear. I normally don't put earphones when I run, so I get to absorb everything that I see and also everything that I hear. So that for me is again another sign that I'm in a state of flow. Another example I could think of is when I'm also stretched. Funny enough, when I've been given a challenge or given a task that is difficult, I find myself really wanting to overcome and find ways and means to cope. So my creativity is also triggered. So in other words, having some positive tension is also good, because generally it challenges you and triggers this creative solution. It brings out the best in me. The only thing to say though is constant stress is also not good. This is good like once, twice, just to spice up things at work. But on a recurring basis, it's a drainer of energy. So this is something that needs to be balanced and needs to be managed properly as well.
Yeah. I think when you're doing something that is in line with your ikigai, or when you're doing something that you thoroughly enjoy or that's in line with your values, that's when you're in the flow. That's when you almost lose track of time sometimes, or when it's ended, you're like, oh, I can't believe it's ended. Those are the times that you're in a flow. The book talks about how some people find it a bit hard to get into the flow as well. So just for you listeners, there are 3 things that they suggest that you could do if you're finding it hard to get into the flow, right? So one of them is to do a task that's not so easy, because then you won't be motivated to do it, and not so hard, because then you might be demotivated to do it. It's just the right amount of challenge. So Emily mentioned how she just loves that challenge, so that puts her in the flow. But if you're finding it hard to get into the flow with something, think about where does it lie on the challenge spectrum and find something that's not so hard and not so easy. And the second thing that they mention is to have a very clear objective. That's when we know that we're going towards something, we have a flow towards something, but also know when to leave it behind when it's time to get down to business. So once the journey has begun, don't obsess about the objective so much. So for example, if you're running for the Olympics, you can't keep obsessing about the Olympic medal, or you can't keep obsessing about, oh, my parents are going to be so proud if I win it. You need to be present in the moment to perform and have a flow, right? So have an objective, but don't obsess about it. And they also talk about how with technology around us, it's so hard to get into a flow with the distraction environment that we're in, right? There are constantly things that are controlling us. We need to be in control of the environment. We need to be controlled at any given moment and live in the present. Get those technology out of the way and focus on that one single task. And those are the things that could potentially help us with a flow. Do you have any other recommendations on how people can do that? How people can get themselves into the flow of things, whether or not they have found their ikigai?
I would say bring your own weather. Now, what I mean by that is there will always be good days and not so good days. So choose to live your day in a positive way. And it's a choice. And I know for some people this could be difficult, but it's just a matter of mindset. And if you start the day with that mindset, the rest of what the book has talked about just makes sense and it will just be in order. I also think that personally, it takes some discipline also, a self-discipline. So if you really want to live a life that is true to your purpose, you need to also know what you need to stop, you need to start and continue doing. It depends on you and what makes sense for you. positive mindset, self-discipline, and then the rest will just be in order.
Yeah, you're right, though. It is hard. Positive mindset and self-discipline are two things that is not very easy to come by.
Yes.
It takes a lot of harnessing positive energy around you, even if things are down, how to do that, how to feel grateful about the things that are going well. But you're right. I think once you have those two things, it's a lot easier for everything to come together, even if times are tough. Moving on to the next topic. And we touched that a little bit when you mentioned stress earlier. And the book talks about, besides finding your ikigai, there are also other ways in which you can use to live long, healthy lives. And that is by maintaining an active, adaptive mind. It drives you towards a healthy lifestyle that will slow the aging process if you keep your mind active. Lack of mental exercise actually causes our neurons and neural connections to deteriorate and reduces our ability to react to our surroundings. So as you get older, a lot of us go into autopilot. We stick to our routine, right? And the only way to break this is to confront our brain with new information. And presenting this new information will create new connections and maintain our brain being revitalized. This is why it's so important to expose yourself to change. Even stepping outside your comfort zone, even if it brings you anxiety, it actually re-energizes you and slows down the aging process. Do you ensure that you keep your brain on its toes? Do you do that? Do you consciously do that?
I am much more mindful of this now. So few things that I do. One is I really never stop learning. For me, in order to be alive, we also need to constantly change and constantly improve ourselves. So I try to learn something new every day, whether it's small or big task. A big learning goal for me in 2020 is to qualify myself as a professional coach, complete the training hours, submit all the certification requirements, including completing 100 coaching hours for practice. And this is on top of my day job, which is also already equally tasking, and then I'm already preoccupied. But the value of this is it made me actually much more mentally active. It moves me to do things that moves me out of my comfort zone. And I think that's very healthy and important in speaking about being adaptive and keeping an active brain. The other thing that I also practice is I stick to routines, but once in a while I break some of them. So for example, I have an established route for running every morning, which keeps me just on the dot with my schedule. But once or twice a week, I decide randomly to change course and just try something different in the neighborhood, which keeps me mentally alert and allows me to also experience something new. And when I come back, I have something to talk about with my husband. I saw this, I saw that. And that just keeps adding also information, new information and memories.
Yeah.
The other thing that I have forced myself to do is, in this day and age with technology, there's just so many tools available, right? And it's hard for me to keep track and also adapt. But because of coaching, I've learned to use a couple of apps and tools that has helped me manage my own productivity. And thanks to you also, Nina, I've also learned from you. I've learned how to do Calendly, some things I could do to just automate my notes taking and getting better as well with conferencing online. I've also purposely made the choice that I will learn both using Android and iOS phone. And this goes with my laptop as well. So I've decided that if I'm using, say, Microsoft at work, I'm going to use MacBook for my personal stuff. So this has allowed me to flex using both systems, and I don't have any issue using any of them versus fixing myself to one, which makes it even more difficult for me to adjust. Yeah. So I just constantly challenge myself and try. Not going to be perfect. There's no harm in trying and also really just being flexible and being adaptive.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is all keeping me mentally alert and you can say active as well.
What I like about what you said is it's not necessarily something like learning a brand new skill altogether to keep your mind active. It could be as small as, and I tell you, I would love to learn how to use an Android, but I'm just so lazy to do it. But it's as learning how to use a new phone. It just switches a different switch in your brain and gets you to think differently and really keeps your brain on its toes. Because there are a lot of people who just make a conscious choice to not learn new things. Why do that to yourself? If you've got time on your hand, and no one ever is old enough to not learn anything. There's no age limit to learning things. I guess it's important to realize that you need to balance between new challenges that you undertake and adjusting your stress level, right? Because when you take on new challenges in your life, it could cause a lot of stress, and it's obviously going to cause your body to wear down faster, and it will cause your healthy cells to age prematurely. How do you ensure that? How do you ensure that? Because I know you constantly take on new challenges, and coaching, for example, was a new challenge in your life. Despite you having a full-time job, a hectic job, managing teams, managing the region. So how do you make that balance happen between new challenges and adjusting your stress levels?
Yeah, sometimes it is situational, but one thing I've learned over time is I need to find what works best for me first. So what works for me is a certain regular routine. So I definitely have a regular routine to exercise. So running is a favorite because it's easy for me. 2 or 3 clicks, just enough to keep the circulation in the morning, especially get going and deliver oxygen to the brain. That's very important, by the way. So that's one. I have a regular breakfast. The rest of the day is just eating in moderation. And I'm quite spoiled this year. I've also been enjoying drinking chocolate every morning. And I mentioned that because, again, speaking about good practices, right? I find that drinking pure chocolate in the morning actually makes a big difference. You should try it. And what we do is we also source the cocoa ourselves, roast it, grind it, and make it into pellets. In its pure form, that's what we prepare. So I'm quite spoiled with that, but it makes a big difference to your energy. And thirdly, I really try to make sure that my sleep is protected. I'm actually a light sleeper, so meaning a single noise would already cause me to get up. But one thing that has helped me is because of my exercise, it's helping me to also shut down in the evening. And then I'm typically the person who is not able to sleep also when a lot of things are still undone. So what I've learned now, not to stress myself, is I write them down at the end of the day. And in a way, like having a closing ceremony, if I may call it like that, for myself, wrapping up the day. This is what I've done, and I'm thankful, grateful for the day. These are the things I have not done and have not completed, but there's another day tomorrow. So tomorrow will take care of itself. And then I just let it be, let another day come again, and let the possibilities present itself. And I've been doing that very mindfully. And I find that if my day is in a way predictable with some of these regular stuff that I do, no matter how stressful and no matter how much unpredictability comes my way, because there's always something new at work or be it personally, I find myself very grounded and still within my center. So I hang on to that because I know that no matter comes my way, there are still few things that I am in control of.
Yeah, I like that. I also feel like this comes with a bit of practice, and it could even mean you getting burnt in the process, burnt by stress for you to learn these things. Because this doesn't come intuitively. You learn through experience that, okay, my mental health is actually a lot more important than I think. I need to figure out how to balance all of this.
It could be different also with different people, but the key is to find it yourself, what works for you, and stick with it. Have something regular that you could hold on, and you know that you are grounded because of this predictability in your life. And then what happens in the course of the day would just be, I think, manageable for you.
Yeah. This is a nice transition to our next topic, which is about resilience. I want to talk about that a little bit. Now, according to the book, resilience is an outlook we can cultivate to stay focused on the important things in life rather than what's most urgent, and to keep ourselves from getting away with negative emotions like anxiety, fear, shame, anger, and harness positive feelings like happiness, love, serenity, gratitude, right? Resilience is our ability to deal with setbacks. The more resilient we are, the easier it is to pick ourselves up and to get back to what gives us meaning to our lives. How do you maintain resilience then? How do you maintain yourself getting carried away by negative emotions? And some of the things you mentioned just now are all great ways as well, but is something like resilience what you also keep in mind and how to maintain?
Yes, definitely. Especially this year, resilience is quite a big topic and equally very important. So first things first is, as you've also heard, I really come to a realization that I need to keep my own health and wellness in check first. That's first priority. In order for me to be strong for others, I need to be the first one who is stronger also. That means physically, mentally, and emotionally. Now, in most cases, the struggle is not really the physical aspect. It's mostly the emotional and mental resilience. I choose not to dwell on the negative thoughts. This is not easy because it has never been for me. But I mentioned earlier, I tell myself I bring my own weather. I choose what weather I want to have and I want to see, and I stick with that. So I reframe the negative to see the other side of the coin and see the possibilities itself so that I don't dwell on it, and I am much more forward looking versus sucking into a negative state myself. I also surround myself with a lot of positivity. What I mean by that is I really cherish time with friends, just having a good laugh and conversations with my family and just being with nature. All of these are helping me to have a positive mindset. As a matter of fact, you don't see it here, but our house has become an urban jungle, I call it. Me and my husband love nature and love plants. So this year, we are bringing the outdoors indoors as well. So that is actually very nice environment for us. So that's also keeping me positive, and you can say adds to the resilience as well. Lastly, I want to say people call this differently, but I also am a person who hangs on a lot to my faith. And in my journey, this has been quite a big factor also for me. I know that I could only plan my life to a certain extent, but I could never tell what lies ahead. Yeah. So I have this notion and big trust that someone bigger than me, or there's a greater force outside of us that is really, you can say, making things work for us. And I sit with that so that I don't also get to hang up if things are not working according to my way. Because I also know, as I've learned in my life story, that my way is sometimes not really the best way. So that is keeping me in check. And if I do that, I'm not too hang up anymore about myself and the outcome.
Yeah, I like that because that's something I believe in as well. But there's only so much you can control. Everything else, you got to just surrender and let it be. But I mentioned earlier as well, whether it was having a community of positive people around you, connecting with nature, having that positive attitude, all of these things are what studies in the book have shown that allow you to live happy, healthy, long lives. It's as simple as that. Whether it's you, like they were talking about how these Okinawans, the people in Japan, the city of Japan, they grow their own plants and they eat that as well. It's these little things that just sustain our lives. It's as small as that. Yeah.
And to be happy, you just need to appreciate life and live life as well. And letting go of things that are not really yours and should not be obsessed about it. And just be open about possibilities. I find that very comforting for me.
Yeah. Speaking about being open to possibilities, let's talk about this a little bit. So fragile is the word used to describe people, things, organizations that get weakened when harmed. That's what fragile means, right? Robust is basically things that are able to withstand harm without weakening. Now, which we spoke about above, right? How you gain resilience and stay robust. Now, what about things that actually get stronger when they're harmed? That's called anti-fragility. And that term was new to me as well when I read the book. And this is beyond resilience or robustness. They resist shocks and they become even better if there's something that has shaken them. Let's talk about that a little bit, because this year was the year COVID hit. This year was the year that a lot of people were fragile and got harmed, or there are a lot of people who were resilient and were able to withstand that. But there are also people who were anti-fragile and actually came out stronger. And I have a strong feeling you're one of those people. So how have you made yourself anti-fragile throughout this time?
Yeah, and I'm glad you asked this question because, again, very relevant to those who are listening, especially in this COVID year. I think we can all agree that this year has taught us a lot about having a plan B. I've seen this at work, probably the most challenging year for anyone working in the supply chain. And I've also seen the impact of this year personally, and particularly a lot of people these days are also not having financial security, and makes you think about, okay, what would I do if my job would go away? And if you're not ready, then this is where there is a tendency of breaking down. Now, anti-fragility as a concept is saying that the more that we are faced with crisis, for example, the more that this becomes even better for you or for this situation. I think that this year has taught us a lot about building contingency plans so that the next crisis, when it comes, we are much more resistant to that damage. And I think particularly at work, when it comes to supply chain, this has triggered, if any, great things about innovation. So there's a lot of new technology being experimented now to make sure that the supply chain will not be disrupted when another global pandemic comes along. Now, for me personally, I think that I took this pandemic year as a great year to acquire new knowledge and learnings. And I'm glad that I embraced that, because this year is where I discovered professional coaching, and it has also opened my eyes not only to help others, but potentially also at some point in time could be explored as a kind of a second stream of income for me. So building some building blocks also for myself to gain some plan B or some resilience when it comes to the financial stream. The other thing that I've also done is if you guys are on investments, I also did a lot of reevaluation this year on what is right, and shifted some of my kind of investment strategies as well to adapt to the time and making it much more sustainable over time. The third thing that we've come to realize as a family, and I know that if we do this right, this would really help us to be resistant to shocks later, is we started to also grow our own food. We are exploring sustainable farming. So we have not really a big land, a small space back in the Philippines. And we said, as siblings, the four of us, we will take the time to understand how to produce our own food. And we will do this for our own use. But if we have extra, we will sell it, and we will also explore how we could help the community, the smaller farms who are just hand to mouth, are really dependent on farming. And again, it has opened up not only a possibility of us being self-sufficient, but it has also opened our eyes to the reality of farming. And with the knowledge and skills that we have, what we could also do to help the community. So I think there are different ways to protect yourself, but it always starts with what, again, makes sense for you. I would just encourage that the right starting point is still about you being selfish about your self-care and protecting yourself first, and then your family, and then your community. So this year is a blessing, if you ask me. While it is unfortunate, but if you really look at it differently, it has forced us to think outside of the box. That at least happened to me and to my family.
I 100% agree. I think there are some people who have just come out stronger from this year, and that's going to benefit them greatly. And for those people who have been hit, it is unfortunate and it is really sad, but I do hope that this year is also a learning experience for how we can maintain anti-fragility in our lives. Because you know what, this is going to happen again at some point. Maybe not at this scale, maybe at a much smaller scale in each of our lives, but it will happen and we all need to protect ourselves. So I'm glad that you came out stronger from this year, because you've grown as a person, and there's nothing more fulfilling than having known that a year that was so impactful to most people was actually quite fulfilling.
Yeah, and again, I would just say everything is all about how we respond. So, the choice of whether you see this negatively or you see this as an opportunity, it's all about your response. Be true to what your heart is telling you. If your heart is telling you that this is going to move you to a direction that perhaps could make sense to your sense of purpose, then yes, why not? But the first thing is you. You have to be the first one to realize it yourself, and then move yourself to action.
Yeah, really nice said, Emily. Great. So guys, we've spoken about a few things, right? We've spoken about ikigai and what it is. We've spoken about how to find that flow or maintain that flow, how to maintain resilience, anti-fragility. And of course, all of this is easier once we found out ikigai. But finding your ikigai is a process. And even if we spend each day finding that, or if we spend each day feeling connected to that, we can just live more fully. So you may not have found it, but even if you're chasing it, it will give you some meaning. So that's a lot that we spoke about. Any last thoughts, Emily? I know you're a mentor, a coach, someone with a powerful ikigai. Do you have any last thoughts for our listeners about this topic?
Yeah, I would just say that don't be too hard as well on yourself. So for me, I talked about my purpose statement earlier. It was only in the last 2 years that I took the time to really write it. Don't be too hard on yourself not having, you can say, that purpose statement or that clarity. What's important is you are constantly as well in a state of reflection on what's going on with your life and taking notice of that. The book is a good help to put some structure to it. And once you have the structure, then the clarity is much better. But each of us would probably do it in different ways and in your own comfort as well. But I would just say don't be too hard on yourself. The other thing that I also want to mention is sometimes we are also bounded by our reality. You might want to be someone else, or you aspire to be something different from where you are today. And not all of us can accommodate the change that we need. But that is totally okay, because sometimes the situation you are in is opening up new possibilities for you that you haven't perhaps seen yet or you haven't thought about. So again, the key is to find wisdom in whatever you are sitting with and be in a constant reflection of what this is telling me, and then take it from there. I always believe that we all have our own North Star and it's uniquely yours, but how to find it and how to get there eventually is a fun journey of discovery. So embrace that and really just also enjoy it. Be happy about your journey. And I hope that also helps people to elevate themselves from just feeling I'm feeling stuck about my life and where is my life headed? Instead, maybe just ask yourself, okay, what is my current state teaching me and what can I enjoy today? And then answers will come and you will be surprised yourself.
Love that. Nicely put. Great. That wraps up the book, Emily. Thank you so much for all the advice you've given and all the examples, because I think the examples you've given truly would give people an idea on how to do it in their lives and how it could work in their lives. My last question to you is, and this is something that I ask all my guests, because this is a podcast where, like you said, we want to keep reflecting about our current state so that we can improve. That's the reason why I started. I want people to keep reflecting, keep introspecting, keep learning, and then keep propelling themselves forward. It's a podcast made for positivity. So my question to you is, what is the best decision you've ever made in your life that has propelled you to where you are today?
I really like this question, Neda, and I'm glad you're always ending the podcast with this question. I had a good thought about this, and it's quite a deep question. It's almost like an existential question. So I would say the best decision I have ever made in my life is to actually stop feeling like I'm a victim of my circumstances. And there's a lot about my life story that supports this. But in a nutshell, what I could say to the audience is we all have a choice. I have a choice in everything that I do. I choose my response. So I mentioned about choose your own weather. That's the same statement I would tell people. I also choose what I would like my life to become, but with the help of the divine grace. And I work towards achieving that. I can only plan to a certain extent, but I give it room for the universe to collaborate with this and see what could be a better outcome. And I'm totally happy with that. Yeah. So yes, stop feeling like you're a victim. You have a choice.
That is so true. And for some things, like we mentioned earlier, you just got to surrender and you just got to leave it up to whatever's meant to be. We can only control so much. And yeah, don't blame yourself. Everyone's trying so hard to make it all work. We're all trying day in and day out to make it for yourselves. At the end of the day, we also know what's best for ourselves. So don't beat yourself down and put yourself at fault. Now, before we wrap this up, Emily's a coach, you know that, and she's also got a community of coaches that are doing such an amazing job. And this holiday season till the end of Jan, they're providing coaching sessions. There's going to be a link in the description of this podcast. Do think about it, because it truly is something that can help you solve whatever you're looking to solve. And we spoke about that earlier as well. If you're lost in life, you're trying to find your life purpose, you're looking for your ikigai, you're going through a career change, you're having relationship issues, it's all about solving these things and working towards where you want to get to.
Speaking about Tree of Life, so we are also calling this Tree of Life project. It's really about providing access to people to try coaching. This holiday season, why not give you or your family or your friends the gift of coaching? And by doing so, you are actually giving yourself and your loved ones the gift of growth. And at the same time, you are also helping charity, because we are also doing this to raise funds for World Vision Singapore. Beneficiary would be children needing education. It's the holiday season. It's a great time to give. And what better gift than really give coaching a try?
Emily, you're truly someone I really look up to. You are constantly learning and improving. And this is why I call you an entrepreneur. It's our vision to inspire more people to become entrepreneurs so that they can work towards their goals from learning from the best books and the best people like you. For those of you who want to connect with Emily, you may find her details in the description of this podcast. Till the next episode, take care. See you soon. Thank you so much, Emily.
Thank you.